I'd like to bring this meeting to order, please. I'm going to ask Reverend Alderman Davis to introduce our special guest for the invocation, please.
Okay, thank you. Giving the invocation tonight will be the Reverend Taylor Mills, pastor of Trinity United Methodist Church here in Southport. Pastor Mills is a graduate of Appalachian State University and Duke Divinity School, and he is the published author of numerous spiritual and devotional works. He has served in ministry for over 20 years, most recently in Beaufort, North Carolina. Welcome, Pastor Mills, and let's all stand for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you so much, and it's bring you greetings from Trinity United Methodist Church, and I will pray the brief portion because I'm not one of those long-winded preachers. I'm short-winded. Liz Snell wrote a prayer for when I disagree with my friend, and I'm sure that doesn't apply to anybody in Southport. So we'll just pretend like it applies to other people and not to us. And I'll just pray this, just a brief portion of this that I think you will find helpful. You have formed us for fellowship, for journeying beside and partaking in the joys and sorrows of the ones we love. I long for peace in all strained relationships. At times, my urge is to foster a false harmony through silence or by pretending to agree. I am tempted to take that easy route, for to walk different paths, yet to care for each other feels impossible. When I feel judged or attacked, I want to tighten my arguments to prove I am right and protect myself from pain. Anger beckons me toward self-righteousness. Though it may grate against my pride, make me willing to consider where I might be in the wrong. Give me clarity and conviction to see where I have erred in my ideas. Let me listen well, speak from compassion rather than fear, and quickly confess where I have failed to love as you have called me to do. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I now have the great honor to swearing in our new city manager, Stuart. And Stuart, would you join me at the podium, please? And provided I don't muff this up, would you please repeat after me? I, Stuart Terrell, Jr.
I, Stuart Terrell.
Oh, I'm sorry. You need to hold that. Do solemnly swear that I will support and maintain the Constitution and the laws of the United States.
Do solemnly swear that I will support and maintain the Constitution and the laws of the United States.
And the Constitution and laws of North Carolina.
And the Constitution and laws of North Carolina.
Not inconsistent therewith.
Not inconsistent therewith.
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office as city manager.
And I will faithfully discharge my duties in the office of city manager.
For the city of Southport.
For the city of Southport.
North Carolina, so help me God.
North Carolina, so help me God.
Sir, thank you very much. You would sign right there? I appreciate it.
Yes.
And Stuart, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you. So now it's official. I have signed the document. So I'm here. It's too late to turn back. I wish to thank the Mayor and Board of Aldermen for placing their trust in me, which I will return at a higher level. I wish to thank Bonnie, Dory, Patty, and staff for help with the transition. I read this at Fort Johnston. The water defines us as a community. The water defines us as a community. So what does that mean? The Bible said the Lord's work is marvelous to see. I believe that's in Psalms. Many communities call themselves homes and places, but few carry the past into the present and future with an unbreakable link. I can feel and sense that link here. Take a walk through the cemetery and the downtown and the water, and you can see this. I walk through the cemetery and feel that link. I and my family are here to be a part of the intergenerational continuum, to protect the small town quality of life that we love and cherish, to be a part of the future of the beauty, charm, and opportunity, a vibrant community that is alive. This will take all of us working together as one. The totality is not a mere heap, but the whole is something besides the parts. For the whole must necessarily be prior to the part. The whole must be prior to the part. That is from Aristotle. The road will not be easy. Achieving excellence and unity is not easy. What is easy is never right. What is easy is never right. You would not need me. You would not need to be here at all if decisions were easy. Okay? Please trust me and the staff to give you our best problem solving and objective analysis and recommendations on all operational matters to guide us on the right path to the future. I have met this staff. They are dedicated professionals, all of them. Call City Hall on all operational matters. We will handle it. We are professionals. Okay? The importance of civility. The unspoken truth of democracy is that not everyone will be happy. The democratic process is by definition messy. Ideas are discussed, some rejected, some modified, some accepted. That's the democratic process. This isn't Russia. This is America. But once we work through the process, we must move on with unity, even though we may disagree, as the minister said. Decisions are not consensus of facts. They are judgments made on dissenting opinions. Decisions are not necessarily consensus on facts, but judgments made on dissenting opinions. That is the democratic process. That's not my thought. That's a management consultant named Peter Drucker. I do not expect us always to agree, and while my inclination is to say yes to everything, sometimes I will have to say no. It is not advisable, okay? Because we bring our professional judgment and experience to bear on all these issues. But it is through the fire of different thought that the middle truth can be found. As long as people of goodwill engage in a healthy debate. As long as people of goodwill engage in a healthy debate, what defines us can rise above our own opinions and achieve something lasting, passing from one generation to another. This must begin with mutual respect and courtesy, something lost on the national stage, but we can find it here, now at this time, so we can spend our time on the water, the land that surrounds us, enjoying the beauty, our neighbors and friends and colleagues in this journey of life that we are on together. Government must be the lighthouse of stability in the storms of community life. Let us be the lighthouse, bringing a spirit of goodwill, dignity, and respect for all together, unified as one community, moving together into the unified future with hope and promise, finding unity even in disagreement. Thank you. God bless us.
And now we're up to item number E, which was going to be the Brunswick High School softball team recognition, but we have found it rather difficult to get all the young women together in July and August to do this, so we're going to postpone this until September. Fortunately, none of them are seniors that I know of, so they'll all be back at school, and we'll be able to get them to come in and give them proper recognition at that time. So we're up to the Duke presentation. Pam Hardy. Pam Hardy is the regional manager for Duke.
Good evening. I wanted to make sure that I captured all the names, so I just have 5 things on my paper. But I am Pam Hardy, the district manager for Duke Energy. I support 6 counties in southeastern North Carolina. I've got Bladen, Brunswick, Columbus, New Hanover, Sampson, and Pender counties. And in that role, I serve as the point of contact for our elected officials, local government leaders, as well as our emergency management directors, as well as the responsibility of pointing our philanthropic dollars to our communities. And we're neighbors here of Brunswick Nuclear Plant. So today I just wanted to come and formally introduce myself and to make sure that the community knew who I was and how to get in contact with me. So thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to meeting you all out and about as we volunteer and engage with the community.
Thank you, Pam. Appreciate it. The next topic is G, public comment. Madam Clerk?
Randy Jones.
Good evening, Mayor Alt, Board of Aldermen. I'm Randy Jones, the 2024 President of the North Carolina 4th of July Festival. And I'm also here with Lucinda Arnold. She is our Senior Vice Chair, and she will be your President in 2025. I'm here this evening to say thank you to the City of Southport. As our presenting sponsor, we could not do it without you. Your department heads, your staff, you are what helped make this festival such a success. I mean, we know as a nonprofit that relies on sponsorship money and relies on our community. I mean, we are 15 board of directors, 40 plus committee chairs, and numerous volunteers that help throughout the festival, that we could not do it without your help. We of course, the North Carolina 4th of July Festival at Southport. So we appreciate it. We are here tonight to say thank you. We look forward to working with you in the upcoming year. And we will see everybody in 2025 at the North Carolina 4th of July Festival. Thank you.
Mr. Jones, I'm going to break with protocol and ask you for a favor, and that is, could you please see if you can track down as accurate a number as possible of all the volunteers? Because I think it's important for us to be able to capture that number. It's a small army that does this, and I want to make sure that everybody understands that takes a small army to do this, please.
I will definitely do that because we are doing an appreciation for our volunteers on July 23rd, and I will have a true number after that.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk?
Dina Brusette.
Good evening. My name is Dina Rousset, and I live at 1116 Spincast in the Preserve at Fisher Landing, and I'm here tonight to speak about our sidewalks. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak on behalf of our HOA. I want to thank Mo and the other city staff we worked with over the past year since we received what we called the sidewalk surprise. I have served as the HOA president since August of 23. When we transitioned from a developer-controlled board to a homeowner board. We felt the need to do so as our budget was being mismanaged. Most of our money, about 75%, was being used to cut and water a small strip of land at the front, while the rest of our neighborhood had construction debris, the grass wasn't being cut, the trees weren't planted as they should have been. There were no reserves, and it was clear that if something wasn't done, there would be additional assessments necessary. We had a stormwater system that wasn't being maintained, with some inlets completely covered. North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, our stormwater system remains out of substantial compliance with the permit provided, which is a cause for concern for our neighborhood as we go to hurricane season. So we already knew we had some challenges ahead of us. The day prior to transition, we got the sidewalk surprise. We were told by the developer that sidewalks would need to be built in front of our homes, about halfway up our front yards, which meant we wouldn't be able to park in our driveways if our streets were to be turned over to the city. So that's when we went to the city and started to work with Mo and others. Folks had lived in our neighborhood for almost 2 years at that point. A little bit about the Preserve at Fisher Landing. We're between 9th and 11th Street, inside the city limits. Parts of our neighborhood directly abut what was the ETJ. I understand that's going away, and where Indigo Plantation will be built. Where 49 lots and 47 homes are now built and occupied. I'll actually ask my neighbors who are here to stand so you can see how many of those 47 are represented. So 2 lots in our neighborhood of the 49 are still owned by the developer and not built. And that is a difference from what we saw in the packet that y'all received. And we believe that's important. There's 2 lots still owned by the developer and not built out. It's a wonderful community of young families, retirees, local business owners, and remote workers. Our youngest residents a few months old, our oldest are in their 80s, some of them with some pretty serious health issues. The 47 neighbors pay collectively about $49,000 in property taxes per year to the city of Southport. We've been working with the city to try and resolve this issue, but we really need the Board of Aldermen's help. We're here tonight to ask you to, 1, that you approve formally notifying the developer that they are in default on the bond. In July of 2020, the city signed a contract and accepted a bond as a guarantee that the developer would complete sidewalk and landscape improvements in our neighborhood. That bond is for $66,000. The developer has been in default since 2022. The developer that signed the improvements agreement is a well-funded developer out of Wilmington. They're currently trying to get New Hanover to approve an additional 163 lots. For us as neighbors, if the city does not go after the bond, we're looking at $1,500 or more per neighbor, which would really be a burden for some of the neighbors. We also ask you tonight to approve that the city seek any additional cost beyond that $66,000 from the developer, As I said earlier, the developer still owns 2 lots. They want to develop those lots. We believe they shouldn't be allowed to do so till they do what they promised to the city. Let's see. Another thing that we found when we looked at the packet, we believe that there may be a reduction in the kind of the difference in the outlay. So it was calculated at 2,070 linear feet. That's on page 215 of your packet. But our driveways are already built. So that should take 450 linear feet out, and we believe that would reduce the cost of any difference from 25 to 30,000 to 7 to 12,000. Finally, we ask that the city manage the construction of those sidewalks and take over our streets as public. If calling the bond and getting the developer to cover this is not possible, or if the removal of the ETJ doesn't change the requirement, then we ask that the city forego sidewalks in our neighborhood, but still accept the streets as public. Thank you.
I'm going to assume that most of you have not been to these meetings before. So the protocol throughout North Carolina is when the speaker speaks, we up here don't comment on it. But trust me, we listen to you. The clerk has taken notes, and we're going to follow up on these issues. But you won't see us having a debate with you on the public comment.
Penelope North.
Good evening, I'm Penelope North. I live at 411 Trout Lily Lane, which is in the cottages of Prices Creek. And I just am concerned, I have personally seen clear cutting like on Stewart, and I can't remember the other street. And I wonder for a city, for a town that is so into the trees and protection of the trees in the historical area, how that was allowed, because we are having a second development. It's not part of our housing unit, but it is phase 2 of the townhomes of Prices Creek, which is on Rob Gandy. And I'm concerned that we're going to put 45 or 48 townhomes. Will they be clear cutting that, and how that will affect our flow of water? I know we have Prices Creek there, but Prices Creek, if anybody's gone back there to look, has some dams in there with down trees, vegetation, and we are trying to protect. I'm concerned about our neighborhood, and so I just want to have some clarification as to how that was allowed in Southport to clear cut and what that means for us. And because it's a lot of trees, and so I'm just concerned about that and would like somebody to follow up regarding that issue. Thank you.
If you're in public comment and you're talking and you want feedback, if you make sure the clerk has your information, okay? Madam Clerk.
John Dix.
Hi, my name is John Dix. I'm 1151 Spincast, Fisher Landing. I just have a few comments on the sidewalk agenda. I looked at some of the minutes on October the 20th, 22, looking at H&H that was supposed to have the 66,000 bond secured. I'm not sure what happened to that since
Excuse me, Mr. Dix, can you talk closer to the microphone, please?
Sorry, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Did you get the... my name is John Dix with Fisher Landing. I'd like to talk to you about the sidewalks, which I only found out about 4 or 5 months ago. We've been there since 2022, and this was brought to my attention recently, and I didn't know anything about it, but I do know that it could become a burden to a lot of the folks on Fisher Landing because the subdivision was so late that it meant that people that were taking mortgages had to have interest rates increased, and some people couldn't afford it. So now we've got the possibility of the burden of the sidewalks on the community, which I'm hoping that the City of Southport can come through with on the $66,000 bond. It's been a lot of hardship on a lot of the owners, and I'd hate to see it come through that we've all got to come through with the payments. Thank you.
Laura Sharkey.
My name is Laura Sharkey. I live at 432 Cage Trail in Southport, and I'm here to express my opinions tonight on the idea of leasing Old City Hall to a nonprofit. I oppose the idea to lease or loan the Old City Hall so it can be used as an art center. I also oppose the idea to lease or loan the Old City Hall to be anything other than a place for government business. The proposal made by the nonprofit would put the city business second to their activities. The Board of Aldermen has identified the need to remodel this current city hall we're using, and we will also need to house the police department someplace once their 5-year lease expires. When reading the proposed CIP that you're going to review tonight and possibly adopt, I'm surprised to see that a plan for a police facility is missing from that document. A year ago, it was proposed the city spend over $600,000 to buy land and then build a police building, which would cost a couple $1 million. Why should we do that when we own property that could serve as a police headquarters? A comprehensive plan is needed for all our city properties, and the Old City Hall property needs to be part of that plan. If this board is not interested in the undertaking of the responsibility of making Old City Hall useful again, then please sell it, reinvest the money into city facilities. Do not give control of the building away. Thank you.
Cynthia Sensei, I'm sorry.
Yes, good evening. I'm Cynthia Simpsay. I live at 1120 Spincast in the preserve at Fisher Landing. And I am here to talk about the sidewalks. When we first were surprised with the idea that we were going to get sidewalks, I developed a petition, which I took through the neighborhood, house to house, several times approaching every house.
Pam, could you speak into the microphone a little bit more?
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyway, the petition I developed, I went to every home, spoke with all the homeowners, and I got 63 signatures against the sidewalks, and that covers 47 of the homes. Three homes I couldn't contact because they didn't answer the door after several attempts. 3 homes, the residents are unavailable because they're not full-time. And 3 homes, residents expressed a concern over who would be responsible for the roads if we didn't have the sidewalks put in. So I'm not sure how any of that plays into this, but I hand-delivered that petition to the town office, and frankly, I was never even acknowledged or told that anyone received that petition. I still don't know if they did. Also, from a personal perspective, my husband and I did extensive landscaping at our home to a considerable amount of money. Before we did that, we inquired with Dream Finders whether sidewalks were in our future. We were told no. Unfortunately, we didn't have that in writing. I don't know if any of you have driven through our neighborhood. And you might think this is pretty forward of me. These are pictures of some of my landscaping. If you'd pass it around, please. My concern now is I'm pretty sure we're going to have sidewalks. I'm concerned that pretty sure we're going to have sidewalks, and how is my home going to be treated while that construction is going on? I don't see how it can easily be done without doing a lot of damage to the landscaping that we've had done. Our plan was also submitted to the HOA and approved, so I'm thinking they had to know that there was sidewalks are being considered or supposed to be happening. Why would they approve something like that? And then I wonder, occupancy permits were given to all the homes. We all moved into our homes. Well, isn't it appropriate that everything should be taken care of before occupancy permits are given? There's no sidewalks. We have lawns, we have irrigation, we have landscaping, and that's all going to have to be torn up to put in the sidewalks. And I know there are others here from the preserve that are going to speak about other issues, so I'll let them bring that up. And I also wondered during the inspection process, I know we waited 2 years for our home, and we lived on our boat in the interim, and I saw inspectors going around in the neighborhood all the time. So I wondered, how come nobody noticed that the sidewalks didn't get done? And I guess where I'm going with that is, aren't sidewalks generally put in before the homes, the irrigation, and the landscaping is done? It's very upsetting to me, and I know it's upsetting to my neighbors. Thank you.
Kim Moss.
Hi, Board of Aldermen, Mayor. Thank everyone for the opportunity to speak. I'm here as well on behalf of the Sidewalks for the Preserve at Fisher Landing. My name is Kim Moss. I've lived at 1057 Downrigger. I'm the lot beside the 2 vacant lots that are in neglect that Hoosier Daddy has failed to bring up to compliance. I've owned my home for 14 months, and I first learned about the possibility of sidewalks in the fall of '23. And I also know some families have been in their homes for nearly 2 years and have never heard this. They've had granted build permits and then issued certificates of occupancy by the city with no mention of the sidewalks. While I live on the opposite side of the proposed sidewalks, I'm still concerned about the possibility of the expense and also the dealing with the construction as well as access to the neighborhood, especially emergency vehicles. Our streets are extremely narrow during that construction. I'm sure there's going to be a lot blocked off. Sorry about that. I ask that you please consider foregoing the installation of the sidewalks and accept our streets as public. If that's just not an option, I ask that you approve calling the bond, paying the difference, and managing the construction project or holding Hoosier Daddy responsible. Thank you.
Jim Connell.
Good evening. Jim Connell, 1016 Downrigger Trail in the preserve at Fisher Landing. Obviously, you've heard from a number of us today. Dina obviously gave all the specifics. I wanted to make it a little bit more personal. For us, when we were looking at our house, and we're just a little over a year, we knew the driveway, they were small. Our driveway is under 31 feet. So we knew it was small, and we have 3 to 4 vehicles plus a golf cart like everybody else does in this town. And we thought we can make it work, right? And we don't have really large vehicles, but In my house, if you go past my house, I'm bumped up to my driveway, my garage door, and I barely hang out over the driveway. So there's not a lot of room. That's before sidewalks. If we knew that we couldn't park our cars on our driveway, or all of our cars on our driveway, we would never have bought that house. We wouldn't, at all. So quite honestly, we feel that we were deceived by the builder. It was never brought up. It's not on any plots. And we would ask you to reassess your decision on the sidewalks. We really don't need them. Thank you.
Sue Hodgen.
Good evening. I'm Sue Hodgen, residing at 608 Cottage Point Way. I'm here as a Southport citizen, not representing or speaking for any board, commission, committee, or club of which I am a member. There have been all kinds of accolades distributed and literal and virtual congrats given out as postmortem on House Bill 911, which was ratified on June 28th by this year's session of the North Carolina General Assembly. With the bill having been local in nature, it does not require the governor's signature. This is done. H 911 became session law 2024-21 on June 28. One of its many provisions stripped away Southport's oversight and protection over what was termed the ETJ, the extraterritorial jurisdiction. Now let me say this up front before anything else. I'm appreciative of the efforts made to gather names on a petition, to sound a siren on social media regarding the legislation. The social media posts, however, have stated that this legislation was done all in 1 week's time, and that is just not true. This legislation was originally filed as House Bill 1064 on May 8th, not June 8th, folks, May 8th. Where was this city regarding informing its citizens? Where was the social media activist groups in encouraging citizenry involvement since the filing date? Where were the town's citizens, why were the town's citizens not rallied for a town meeting to explain the legislation and request communications with legislators? It's been stated that the city sent a letter regarding the legislation on May 22nd. I think it'd be important and helpful if this letter could be published on the city website and the city's Facebook page. There was an article in the Brunswick Beacon on May 23rd and updated May 30th that had the mayor quoted that the city, quote, expects to reach a compromise, quote, on the bill. What was that compromise to be? We as a city never heard anything of it. And why was this statement attributed from the mayor rather than the full Board of Aldermen being involved, since they are actually tasked with voting in decisions or actions for our city? Why were the citizens not kept informed throughout May and June, rather than everything being held close to the vest, discussed only in closed session, so that by appearances it was being hidden under the veil of, quote, discussions with council, unquote? Where's the transparency of our city administration? Several of the people sitting at this table ran on open and transparent government, pressing the point and criticizing prior administrations because in their eyes they failed to keep citizens informed. An example of the very point regarding less than open discussions. We've just been through a budget setting session where multiple city employees were brought into very open deliberation workshops and asked exhaustive questions about the operations of their departments, their personnel. Then the tirade of social media criticisms ensued, and they were brought back in for additional questioning. Was this legislation that was making its way through the General Assembly with its far-reaching implications any less important than a department head's 16-mile commute in a city truck when they're considered an always-on-call employee? I say absolutely not. We all needed to hear about this legislation within a couple days of its filing, and we did not. Our city's leadership failed us all, some in their campaign checkboxes and promises, some in their insistence that we, as a city, had the answer and could tell everyone else what that answer needed to be. I'd suggest that consideration be given to the release of the minutes of the aldermen's closed sessions, the parts where this legislation was discussed, for our citizenry to be fully informed of the discussions held and the actions taken resultant. While we were caught up in budget deliberation minutia, this legislation continued down the track. Shortly past mid-June, the contents of House Bill 1064 were incorporated into House Bill 911, a bill that contained many county and municipal actions across the state. There have been social media postulations that have called this incorporation sneaky, and that our ETJ language was deceitfully included. Folks, if there have been any collective learning from this legislative session, it's that our existing staff and our city leadership are not as well versed as they could be in how bills move through the General Assembly. Because my own job requires that I do monitor and work with the legislature, I know that the bill drafting division for the General Assembly quite often combines small, similar bills into larger bills with similar actions. Again, I'm not saying I like what's happened regarding our ETJ, but I will say that the General Assembly was not sneaky and did not deceive Southport in these actions. There's a social media campaign now and a petition to repeal H. 911. As noble an action as this is, it's not going to happen. Because this ratified bill encompasses so many actions in so many areas across North Carolina, this is a done deal. And I'm not holding hope that our ETJ would be singled out and reestablished either, folks. There are statutory requirements for establishment of an ETJ, and then the General Assembly itself has to approve those establishments. Do we really think that if they remove ETJ oversight, that they'll grant it again? That's just not reasonable thinking. I believe a more solid approach for Southport at this time is an effort to cooperate with the county for the information that it will require as its planning staff, planning board, and its board of county commissioners looks at this new area of the county, new to county administration anyway. I hope that appropriate members of Southport boards and committees and city staff are involved in discussions about how Southport ordinances, tree protection, and overall purpose for caring for our town may be incorporated into county processes and protections. That, I believe, is our next best hope from this very purposeful action that was taken against our city. We all have our personal opinions about why and how this tragedy befell Southport. But now, let's not show yet another way that Southport is currently divided. Let's try to be the ones taking the high road and being the example for what we have now of what could be a better result for all of Brunswick County. I believe we'll be recognized for it and be the better for it in the long term. Thank you for your time.
David Geary.
Mr. Gary, if you could press the button on that microphone, please. Thank you.
Better? My name's David Geary. I live at 1125 Spincast. I'm here to talk about the sidewalks in Preserve Fisher Landing. I'm here in a kind of a unique situation. I will not be affected by the sidewalks. They will not be on my side of the street. But my concern is that I've been hearing different scenarios of how they will be installed. Anything from right up at the curb to starting 8 feet in and going another 5 feet. And that brings me to an interesting point. I'm not quite sure why the sidewalks are being put in at 5 feet wide. I looked at the ADA compliance guidelines. Minimum sidewalk width is 3 feet. And the 5-foot sections are for passing of 2 wheelchairs, but they're only required every 200 feet. So if you consider the fact that you only have to have a 3-foot sidewalk unless you're trying to have 2 wheelchairs passing, and it has to be one of 2 situations. It either has to be a 5x5 area so that 2 wheelchairs can pass, or it has to be a T-set intersection that's 4 feet wide on each of the sections of the T in order for one to back into it and another one to pass. So if you look at the driveways that we have, there's really only one section, as far as I can tell, that is possibly 200 feet, and that would be in the common area where you would have to do something that would have to be 5 feet wide. Otherwise, turning around, passing each other or turning around in a driveway would give you enough width. So basically what I'm asking is, if these sidewalks are going to go through, can we have them put up by the curb, and do they have to be 5 feet wide? Can we do the ADA compliance of 3 feet and then provide areas of 5x5 where wheelchairs can pass or that they can turn around? I thank you for listening, and I appreciate the time.
Jenny Prunty.
My name is Ginny Prunty, and I live at 5906 Dutchman Creek Road, Southport. At the Brunswick County Board of Commissioners meeting on Monday, April 1st, the commissioners voted unanimously to send a letter to the North Carolina General Assembly asking for the authority to preserve heritage trees and limit clear cutting in new developments that are larger than 25 acres. And this was not applicable to forest, timber, or agriculture activities. The county's request was sent to our local legislative delegation that included Representative Charlie Miller, Representative Frank Eiler, Senator Bill Rabin, and upon inquiring with the Brunswick County Manager Steve Stone on Monday about where this request stands now, I was told that no action had been taken on the request in either chamber of the House or the Senate. Mr. Stone told me that Representative Miller said that the county's request was under consideration. The speed of considering such matters of our state representatives varies greatly, as was shown with record speed when Representative Miller filed original House Bill 1064. And may I note that he had introduced originally before that House Bill 1063, which was specifically naming Southport and specifically removing Southport's abilities to regulate trees. But anyway, it was record speed when Representative Miller filed original House Bill 1064 on May 7th, which was proposed to eliminate Southport's ETJ. Then it was combined with other local bills, as Ms. Hodgins told you, into House Bill 911. That bill passed with lightning speed on June 28th. It would seem to me that given the outcry of the county citizens regarding the massive clearing and cutting and burning that's occurring in this county, that our Board of Commissioners should be more proactive in advocating and pressing our legislative delegation for this authority or for an answer to the letter that they sent. So since Southport's ETJ will soon be removed from the city's zoning jurisdiction, I urge our city officials to press both the county and the North Carolina delegation, including Representative Miller and Senator Rabin, for a timely answer to this county's request. Thank you.
I have two comments to read. The first is from Mr. Frank Boate at 1033 Downrigger Trail. I closed on my property on March 28, 2023, and moved in on April 1st, 2023, and have been a full-time resident since. I was never made aware that sidewalks were to be installed in the neighborhood. None of the plot plans or documents provided to me by Dreamfinder Homes or developer showed sidewalks. I am very concerned about the installation of sidewalks in the preserve at Fisher's Landing from a safety and financial impact perspective. I asked the town aldermen to approve the City of Southport involvement in the sidewalk project from a bond, construction management, and maintenance standpoint, and assume responsibility for the roads within the preserve at Fisher Landing. Thank you, Frank. The next is from Mr. Nick Catrombone. Excuse me. I live at preserve at Fisher Landing along with my wife, Sue. We are one of the first owners to make settlement at the preserve. We have a front row seat living in the second home by the main entrance. We were watching the activities as the community was being built, also meeting the new homeowners one by one as they visited to see the progress on their homes. I'm going to share a story with you of a major issue we had when we first moved in. Our sewer was backing up into our showers and toilets so much that it made our house unlivable. You can imagine the mess that it caused as our excitement of new ownership turned to anger. Our first calls were to the builder and the developer. Their response could not be any less discouraging. Sparring all of the details, simply put, they said it's not their fault, call a plumber. Not one shred of compassion. The next call was to the City of Southport. Their response was immediate. They literally were at my house in minutes. After about an hour, they had the problem diagnosed and were quick to work. The problem they discovered was twofold. The main sewer never had the caps removed from pressure testing and thus causing sewage from the then 4 occupied homes to remain in the sewage pipe and just backing up from each flush. The second issue was our sewer from our home to the main was broken or crushed. Crushed was the term that the city workers used. Within a few hours, there were city trucks and workers everywhere completing the job the same day. All the while, they took the time to check inside my home to see if everything in the home was working correctly. This turned our anger into confidence and peace of mind to know that the City of Southport had our backs and where the people truly care about their citizens and spring into action without a lot of BS. Now that I am confident that the City of Southport will come through again, acting on the sidewalk issue with purpose and vigor, and will do the right thing. We are both retired and on a fixed income, pouring everything into our new home. I am confident this issue will be resolved with no financial burden impacting us or the community. When we purchased our home, we followed all the rules and regulations set forth by the builder, developer, and the city. Now we are asking the same in return. We feel the City of Southport should enforce the rules and regulations they set upon the developer and builder that they set forth in order to build and develop our communities, which includes sidewalks. So with that said, I feel the city should take on the responsibility to have the sidewalks installed with no financial impact to the community. Nick and Sue Contrombone.
Okay, because I am assuming that a good hunk of you are probably going to leave somewhere in this meeting, I'm just going to throw this out for if you have trouble sleeping. Read Senate Bill 166. It really doesn't apply specifically to you, but it is the type of issue that we'll have to deal with, and it deals with sidewalks in the future from the state legislature, because we actually do read these bills, we actually do converse with our representatives, we actually go to Raleigh, we actually do all of those things, regardless of what some people think. But I would encourage you to read Senate Bill 166, and with that, I'll entertain a motion to close public comment. Is a motion and a second? Is there any comment? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. The next is to the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda, or is there any changes to the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
There's a motion to approve the agenda and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye. Is there any opposed? Thank you. It's unanimous. With that, the approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Is there any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. I'm going to go through some of these consent agenda items because some of them are setting dates for public hearings. And if we took the shortcut, we could just say we've done it. But I would like you to actually know what we're doing here. So there's going to be a public hearing for the Unified Development on Open Space and Recreation for certain developments, and that is going to be on August 8th. There'll be a public hearing on Development Services for a call for public hearing for Unified Development Amendment to landscaping and buffers in the right-of-ways. August 8th. August 8th, 08.
Microphone, please.
I'm sorry.
Specifying that that's the same time as our public meeting. It's at our public meeting.
Yes, it'll be at our regular board meeting in this building at 6 p.m. Okay. Then there's I think there's one more. Is there another public hearing? Okay, I'm sorry. There's a public hearing on signs, which is also August 8th as well. And that the rest of them are minutes for various meetings that we've attended, and they're all on the website. So, next topic is the cemetery committee updates. Larry?
Out of the way so that you can, I don't want to.
I'm sorry.
Could you hit the button, Larry, on the...
Could I get clarification on who approved the consent agenda, please?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Which motions and second approved the consent agenda?
Karen made the motion and Rebecca seconded it.
There we go. Cool. Thank you. And I was given quick, let's see if we got this right. Ooh, let's see. There we go. Good evening, Mayor Alt, Board of Aldermen. Thank you for inviting us in. I'm Larry Ashley, Chairman of the Cemetery Committee. Before I get started, I didn't hear anybody say anything about the town manager taking everybody out for ice cream afterwards as his first night. So isn't that usual standard practice?
Aren't you supposed to take me out for ice cream?
Yeah, we could do that too. Yeah, nice turnaround. It's going to work well. So we're here tonight. I want to start this off, and I'm trying to think of the best way to do this, is we're standing on the shoulder of a lot of people ahead of us. 230 years ago, we had our first burial in Southport, and it's taken some time, mostly over the past 30 years, with people with the Historical Society and others that have actually done a lot of work leading up to Pat Kirkman starting the cemetery committee under the last administration. So here we are today. A lot of things have happened in 230 years, a lot of catching up to do. We've got a ways to go, so bear with us. We'll show you what we've done so far. In your packages, which I know are hefty, and I will tell you that Dory is a great gatekeeper. She said, cut it down. Didn't quite, I think I was able to cut out 4 pages, and so anyways. So in your packages, you've got a cover letter that'll tell you, because we're an advisory committee, we work under you. There's a cover letter that'll ask you to approve a couple of the items in here, as well as on slide 27, it gives you even a better overview of things that we need direction from you, so that we're making sure that we're actually following your guidance and doing what you want us to do as your cemetery committee. So our focus has been, for the first half of the year, we really didn't do a whole lot at the end of last year. We really got rolling in January. So our main concern has been certainly families, because we owe it to our families to make sure that when people are buried, that they're well cared for in our cemeteries. And that is so absolutely important. So their primary concern, the families are our primary concern when it comes right down to it. So we spent a lot of time doing data gathering on the grave sites, cemetery maintenance, records, understanding operations. There's a whole lot to understand about operations. It's not as easy as just having a funeral and that's the end of it. There's a lot that goes into this. Potential issues, and then certainly laws and ordinances. We're going to come back to the laws and ordinances because there's a lot of work that has to be done along that way. So as I mentioned, I'm the chair. Tish Haddam is the vice chair. Lynn Gieman is the recording secretary, and also our representative from the beautification committee. Sorry if I get lost on there. Jason Robbins, newly acquired member David Miller, Musette Steck, who's our representative from the Historical Society, and then Andrew Parks, who is our representative from the Smith Cemetery Foundation. From an employee end, we've had so many questions, and these 4 employees have stood out. They've been so patient with us. Alana Dale from the Department of Community Relations, she's also a liaison for the city. Public Services, Tom Stanley. I've almost got Tom on speed dial with some of my questions. And also the Public Services crews. They've all been very helpful. Dory, as Assistant City Manager, bothering them with questions. The same thing with Tanya Shannon. And I know I'm supposed to say Elena and Tanya, but I've got permission to say Tanya and Alana. So just bear with me on that. They actually have told me I can say that. So history, as you know, Smithfield was chartered in 1792. I'm going to roll right through, going all the way down to 2023 where the cemetery committee was established. So you can see 230 years, there's been a lot going on, and everybody thinks when people go into the cemeteries that's the be-all and end-all, and it's really not. So it's great that you've actually put together a cemetery committee. So again, we've started looking at records, cemetery conditions, cemetery operations, maintenance, laws and ordinances, and also future growth. I'll speak more to that. So the current state, we've looked at the records in the City Hall, City Clerk's office. They're maintained by Tanya, and they're on a homegrown Microsoft Access database that was put together by, I think it was Wayne Strickland, about 2006. The danger with having a homegrown database is nobody supports it. It's old, and I'll be mentioning looking at software purchases in the future. One of the other things that you should know is Tanya goes out, and it's inconceivable to me that because she's in the city clerk's office, but she actually goes out when the funeral director comes in and says, hey, I need to bury this person. She goes out, she marks the spot. So she goes out with the orange paint and says, yeah, this is where the person goes. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic when you really think about it. Public Services takes care of all the maintenance. Everything falls under Tom, whether it's the general maintenance, the services, public services. If you go by Northwood, you'll see that there's a new trash holding area. And they've also started working on the fence. We didn't ask them to do it. They just started doing it on their own, and it's absolutely fabulous, and it's looking fantastic, Tom. Thank you. And they certainly coordinate all the mowing services by Best Funeral Services and the water services for the various cemeteries. So here's the other part that really took us a little bit aback. So cemetery operations, once they come in and they say they want to do a burial, everything else follows under the cemetery company, the funeral home. So they coordinate the gravesite excavation, they take care of the installation of burial vaults, the burial of the remains, the site cleanup after the burial, the gravestone footing installation, and the gravestone installation itself. The key part to all of this is, to the best of my knowledge, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, is there aren't any inspections being done. So it's a possibility that a funeral home could actually have a gravestone put in and have the proper footing completed. And not too long ago, I saw a picture of a young man that was playing around with a gravestone that wasn't set properly, that came over on him, and they had to use the airbags from the fire department to actually lift it, not in our city, but another one. Crushed his legs, and that's why it's so important to have proper footings in cemeteries and make sure the gravestones are installed correctly. So, we've obtained preliminary legal guidance, that's also in your packages, created a mission and vision statement and guiding principles, which is our document that tells us what you want us to do. We've put together a package of possible hazards in the Old Smith burying ground, the tree survey, forestry committee has done a preliminary tree survey. Northwood signage report, Alderman Spencer asked to do that. The signs have been, something is eating the signs. I don't know if it's rodents, if it's squirrels, if it's birds, if it's bees, but you can actually see the gnaw marks on them. So along the way, those are going to need to be replaced. We're working on the creation of a landscape plan, also a gravestone assessment in Old Smithville, and you'll see some pictures in here as well. One of the most important things that we need to work on is the cemetery ordinance, updating it, as well as looking at cemetery management software, which will replace the old access database. And one of the most important things, and we had some discussion with Bonnie helping us, the American Legion wanted to put flags on the gravestones, and we don't have any type of process. So they take care of Northwood. I'm not sure, I still haven't found out, and if anybody knows the answer to this, we're not sure who puts the flags in Smithville. But we need some sort of a process to make sure that when they get placed, they're not in the way of Tom's crew when they go in for mowing and things like that, and that they're later removed. The other thing that we're working on with the American Legion is actually identifying all of our veterans' graves. We don't have a good listing of the veterans and where they're buried in the cemeteries, and that's so important that we recognize them, as well as the river pilots and others that we have in our cemeteries. So this sets the stage for everything else. So we put together some questions for the attorney, and we asked, does the city or its agents have the legal authority to remove hazards from a gravesite? And the answer essentially came back, no. Because the property is deeded over to those people, and when you look at a deed, it's actually like a house deed. It tells them that they own the property. So the way our ordinance is written, we don't have the authority to go on any gravesite and fix it. Whether the stone is moving, whether there's trash on it, or there's more articles on it than there should be, glass objects, things like that. Because the way our ordinance is written, we don't have any authority to touch it. Unless the attorney's changed his mind in the meantime. No, he haven't changed his mind? All right. I figured I'd ask. So, Old Smithville started in 1794. It's about 2.5 acres. There's about 1,100 grave sites in there right now that we know about. The earliest grave that we're aware of is 1804. Most likely there was some before then. Interestingly enough, the city required any future burials to have an archaeological survey done. So they set a standard where they said, these are where the grave sites are. Anybody buried after this fact, you've passed. If a family came in and said, hey, I want to be buried, if they weren't part of that archaeological survey, then the city has told them no. And part of that was caused because somebody said, I want to be buried here, and when they started digging, there was actually somebody already buried there. Caused a few problems. They finally worked it out, but it wasn't easy. But we did have a burial there in May of 2024, just last 2 months ago. So let's see what else. So a couple things I want to show you on the hazards. This is actually an old coping or an old, what's left of an old fence. If you go through there, you'll see a lot of the wrought iron fences. The hazards with things like this is like a metal punji stick sticking up out of an old coping. If somebody steps over here thinking it's a step, they're going to impale their feet. It's clearly, a danger. There's also areas in the cemetery where you have what's left of old fences. As much as that's a historical piece of fence, it's also a trip hazard because it blends in with the surface of the area. Again, these are within the grave site. So this is actually 2 copings, meaning the ones that surround the graves that are side by side. And that's why the fence, that was 2 prongs you see there, was actually what that used to be until it rotted away. So you can also see galvanized piping. You can see another spike sticking up was left over from a fence. I mean, there's certainly some dangers. We get a lot of people walking through the cemetery. There was a TikTok video or something like that of somebody looking for they were expecting a new child, and they were looking through the cemetery for old names. And I think they finally decided, they settled on Salem, which I thought was pretty cool. But anyways, so people are walking through, and I've stopped and talked to people multiple times. And so we do get visitors. This is another area of the Westcott grave site up near the front. You can see the coping is all degraded, and what's left of the fence is sticking up. Same sort of thing, only you've got these lines about every foot of fences. Again, that's on somebody's grave site. Interestingly enough, the next one is on Nash, parking lot at Taylor Field. If you look down in here, those are actually old railroad tracks, and they may be, and I'm going to say maybe, be the only thing that's left of the railroad that used to run through the city. So there may be some historical significance. I was kidding with somebody that we could dig them up, cut them into pieces, sell them as door stops or something like that. But anyways, they may be the only thing left from the railroad that came through that was dug up in the 1940s, where they sold it off as scrap for the World War II effort. So these 2, it's the Everett grave marker on the left picture, and the Captain Samuel Potter grave marker on the right. Both of those are leaning in opposite directions. Both of them weigh a whole lot of just pounds upon pounds. So you can see how if they fall over, they're going to be absolutely destroyed. If they fall on somebody, somebody's going to get hurt. The other thing is the Everett one, there's actually a remarkable story on there. If you haven't gone into the cemetery, read it. It's about I think it was the SS Florida. Is that right, Pat? Yeah. About how a couple got swept off the deck of the Florida. It was the daughter of the doctor, swept off the deck of the boat on Christmas Eve in 1857. Yeah, a long time ago. I will go with that, a long time ago. But the stone is actually falling apart, too. If you go look at the base, in your package, you can actually see pictures of it where it's cracking. Again, it's like, what's the city's responsibility? And that's something that has to be determined. Same thing with the Captain Samuel Potter. That's from 1847. I'm sure there's still some Potter family in town, but there's probably about 10,000 of them by now. So to track them all down would be quite difficult. We've also done almost too good of a job of cleaning. This particular stone is the Piner family stone, which is in front of the Everett family stone. And what's happened through the years is all the soil has eroded away. So normally where the 7 is on the measuring tape is usually where the soil would go. You can see how all the soil is eroded away, and what's left is the cobble that's actually holding that stone up. So again, that's one of those areas where I think we could go in with some material and use some Bermuda grass or something like that to help stabilize it. So there really is a trade-off on how well you want to clean the cemeteries, because if you're not leaving any leaf litter behind, there's no organics going into the soil. So what you have in that particular area, you can see the slope where all the soil is just eroding downhill, actually covering up some of the copings. So the Forestry Committee did a visual tree survey. There is no tree that they're aware of that's in immediate danger that they're aware of. And I'd put that they're aware of quotes around that, because it was a very preliminary survey. And I'm chuckling a little bit because if you look at this tree right in the center, you can see daylight right through it. So still not a hazard. Unfortunately, it's down in the back, so if it goes, it's going to go over the fence into the back. But you can see how some of the trees are old enough in there that they're actually getting hollowed out. Smithfield area ground, one of the things I wanted to put in there is mowing's done at about $420 per cut. It's done every other week. They also do a cleanup occasionally, and that's $400, so it's a pretty good deal. I think Tom's working with them to, they go a little fast sometimes, and we're trying to get them to slow down and be a little bit more cognizant of the old stones and everything, so that takes some work. Northwood was established about 90 years ago. 7.5 acres. There's 5,000 grave sites. So when you look at all the graves, when you start looking at numbers, there's about 6,000 graves, not counting the John Smith Cemetery. About 6,000 graves that we're responsible for in this city right now. In Northwood, it's 100% sold. There are no remaining graves available for sale in there. The capacity on burials is about 40%, so we've still got about 60% more to go in there. Not unusual to have people buy them for years for an 8-plot type of thing and then forget that they've got room for 2 more or 3 more, things like that. So there's some opportunity here to advertise to the family, say, look, you've still got room here. So the last sale was in 2020, and like I said, it's fully sold out. A little bit of a Wild West going on in there with some of the grave sites, but along the way we'll get some control around that. As I mentioned, Public Services has been working on the fence, working on a new trash holding area so that it's not just for trash but also for brush, that Best Funeral Services will come in and clean up. In Northwood, I mentioned about the signs, that something's eating it. And then we've got some coping issues in that cemetery as well, where through the years, the coping is just given away, it's fallen apart. People haven't maintained it. Perhaps some of the mowing operations have run into it. So there are things like that we need to take care of. Because let's face it, if you've got, it's like being in a neighborhood. You want your neighbor to take care of their lawn. You want the neighbor to take care of their property because it impacts your property as well. Nobody wants to go into a cemetery that's not well cared for, and these have certainly are cared for. We just have some few issues along the way with things like that. One of the other things, in front of the cemetery, I mentioned about identifying the veterans. Some years ago, and perhaps some of you might know who did it, the name is on the boards, but there was an Eagle Scout project where he came in and he identified all the different veterans and he put their names on the boards to the best of his knowledge. Those signs are now dated, they're faded, they're falling apart, and I would recommend that they be removed. We've taken pictures of them. Again, the Legion is also taking pictures, but we're looking at saving that information on the veterans. But they're outdated. They're probably, I don't know, Mark, any idea how, 20 years? Yeah, so we'd like to be able to take those down, and they're in the common area, so that shouldn't be a problem. The other thing, I mentioned about all the plots being sold. I think there's capacity for growth in Northwood. So that if people who are living in the city have never had an opportunity to buy a plot, will have one. And that's either through, you'd have to do expanding an area for cremations, or you build some columbariums, which are basically condos for urns. And I'll show a picture of that. But we would need to survey. There was a survey done in 1938, another one I think in 74, so you'd really need to survey the whole cemetery to see if you actually had that capacity. Tom's crew went in with the labels and marked the streets where the last survey was done, so they've already got those pins in the street, in the lanes. So these are columbariums, if you're not familiar with them. They're basically just a condominium that people put their urns in. They actually sell for some fabulous money. They charge $1,000 plus maintenance fees and things like that. So there's some capacity. There's areas in there where you could actually put in a couple of these, I think, so that if people wanted to be buried in them, they could. But to do that, if we ever do that, we need to reestablish or set up regulations and redo our ordinance. Our cemetery ordinance is absolutely weak, and we don't have any regulations around that at all. So you'd have to do that all in advance. And then John Smith Cemetery, we take care of the mowing there. It's 144 years old. Best of our knowledge, there's about 1,700 grave sites. That's not a municipal cemetery, so we don't get too involved in that. But the mowing is $620 per cut. And future work. So we need to update the cemetery. This is the slide, 29, I think it's wrong on here. But anyways, update the cemetery ordinance, update the cemetery, create cemetery regulations, continued review of the records, purchase and implement cemetery records software, update the survey of Northwoods, include expansion potential, columbariums, expanded plot locations, and we need to do a fee review. If you look at the listing of fees, the fees for the cemeteries don't show up on your list of fees at all. If you go to the website, you won't find them. If we're going to do any kind of work, we need to update that process, especially if we're going to do any expansions in the cemeteries. We also need to update the cemetery committee ordinance. As good as it is, one of the problems you have is if you don't have somebody from Historical Society or somebody from Beautification or somebody from the Smith Cemetery Foundation, you wind up with an empty seat. What you should have in there is something that says you've got first dibs on it. If you don't supply us with a name, we're going to go on to the next person until that seat becomes open again. And so we don't have that problem, but you could have that problem. Also have to develop the gravestone assessment survey for Smithville, and also develop a landscape plan. Got to have a valid landscape plan. Right now, we've got a nice set of work orders for Best Funeral Service that tell them how to mow, but we should be establishing things, whether it's grass cutting or plantings or things like that, all part of a landscape plan. So you can see there's a lot that goes into the cemetery. So Ben Franklin wrote a letter to Jean-Baptiste Leroy in 1789 that said, "But in this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes. You guys take care of the taxes. We'll help you out with the other part." So up to this point, I know it's been fast. It's a lot of information, a lot in your packages. I promise you we will not bury you with 100 pages again, but happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions from the board?
I don't have any questions, but I noticed, Larry, in pages 1 through 3, the sort of your summary page, that you're asking for actions, like on number 4 where it says the mission statement. I didn't know if you needed you've obviously been thoughtful about the mission and vision statements and the guiding principles, and this would probably be a good addition to the committee's governing ordinance language. Was that your intent with that language?
Right. I would say that the items, even though on number 1 it says slide 27, I think it's actually slide 29.
I'm looking at number 4.
Okay, right. But I'm saying each one of these has action recommended or action required, but I would agree with you, yes, on the mission statement. That provides us, because we're an advisory committee, we could be all over the board if you guys don't tell us what to do, but that mission statement really encapsulates it all into one reasonable document. So yes, that would definitely be something we would be looking for, as well as the others on here too.
Yeah, because I don't know what the best approach is. If you want to, because this would be updating the ordinance for the committee.
This would be updating the mission statement, which then would allow us to update the ordinance.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
It would be, so if y'all are, one of the things I was asking is, if your committee's comfortable looking at your committee, the ordinance that's governing your committee, and then proposing these changes and working with staff and then bringing it back to the board, and then that would be a flow. I'm not speaking for everybody, but that would be a flow. And so I think that would be a way. I thought those were very thoughtful and are ready to just fit right in the ordinance. But if you want to add the conversation about if these organizations don't send someone, you could do that, and staff can help you with that, and then it can come back to us. Then you had number 5, which you had 2 things. which I'm actually looking at grave sites. It says requires further discussion and modification of the cemetery ordinance and drafting cemetery regulations. That seems like the first step you have to do before then you take action to mitigate concerns, right?
That'd be correct.
Is your committee comfortable working with staff to
Oh, yeah,
look at
absolutely.
those? So I think we would appreciate that, y'all doing that and
Okay.
coming back. And then, of course, then what would follow would be Tom and y'all then making a proposal about how you're gonna mitigate stuff.
Sure.
Then on number 6, working with the forestry committee, that's awesome, with doing that. And maybe the forestry committee also working with staff can come up with some kind of budget for future,
Yeah, there will be work
budgets
that's
and
needed in
all
there
of
eventually.
that sort of thing.
Yep.
And then lastly, action number 7 regarding the signs, that I know the community relations department's working on signs and all that, and Elena is headed that. So within your committee, you may come up with some recommendations but that would be a future, budget type
Right,
item.
right.
For sure. And then the only other thing I would suggest, and you may have already done this, is getting together at some point with the Historic Preservation Commission and just alerting them to your conversation, because all this is really excellent
We can do that.
information.
Thank you.
So,
We would also need the number 4, the mission statement approved as well, because the
Okay.
mission statement is our guiding principles.
Right.
So, yeah.
right. Well, and if you put that in, if y'all sandwich it into the ordinance, then you can bring it too, and we would then review the ordinance. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're really two different things. Mission statement is more of a, for us as a committee on things that we should be attending to, which is, it's not legal, where this ordinance is more legal type of work.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about it would go, the mission statement would go in your committee ordinance, of your committee.
Yeah,
directives.
that's a good question. I don't know how that works, but okay.
That's what I was saying. Put those things in your committee ordinance.
Okay.
As opposed to the cemetery
I
ordinance.
see what you're, so
Yeah.
it's really clarification in the ordinance of what the cemetery committee should do.
Right.
Perfect.
That
Okay.
way you'll have it in there. It'll be codified.
All right, perfect, thank you.
So-
Good ideas, thank you,
Thank you for all your work. This is amazing.
thank you.
Any other comment?
I think this is a wonderful thing that we're doing. I only caution that because we don't own the plots, that we do not overstep and potentially offend someone who thinks that their family members are being treated the way that they want them to be, and
Yeah.
maybe it's just not up to what we think as a whole should be, but just to tread lightly there and make sure we're not legally doing something that we can then get in trouble for.
Yeah, absolutely, there's no doubt, people mourn in different ways, and if you drive through Northwood, you can see how they mourn differently, and we want to be so respectful of that. We do, and we're so careful, and that's why I was saying that very first bullet point was the families. So, yeah, good advice, and we'll continue to follow that too. Thank you.
And one of the ways that you might recognize some of the veterans are coins on top of the grave sites.
Yep, right.
So just watch for the coins.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I think it's if it's a quarter, you actually served with a person when they passed away, type of thing. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, so I've had the luxury of walking the cemetery with Larry before. He pointed out most of that stuff, of the spikes and stuff. I can't go without saying, once again, and you already brought it up, that without Pat and her work,
right,
and all the eye rolling and smirks that she got for 11 months paid off, and she got this put through. Mark, who is our representative to the thing, had beaten me up more than once about making sure that this came through, and the board voted on this. It's not a Rich Hall thing. I take it from the conversation that you're going to come forward with recommendations for changes in the statutes.
Right.
And a budget for next year. Remember, we're not going to do it all in 1 year.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got to keep it.
Yeah.
Space it out.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
And I am shocked at the tree issue. when you and I were there, I thought, my God, we're going to have like $1 gazillion worth of tree issues, and we're going to have to close the cemetery down because the branches are falling on people's heads. But it's all good. That's
Yeah,
all.
apparently the canopy is so tight, plus you have a slope that protects some of the trees. We've got some dogwoods in there that should come down. That
I'm not worried about a dogwood falling on somebody's
but the
head.
oaks, yeah, in great shape.
All right, thank you, sir. I certainly
thank you.
appreciate it, and I thank all the members of the board here for all of their hard work. As Alderman Mosteller has pointed out, this is a huge first step. Thank you,
Happy
sir.
to do it.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm hitting somebody else's slide. There we go.
So the next one up is Bob Jarvis, who's going to do an adoption. I'm sorry, I can't read correctly. Of the capital improvement plan and project updates.
Bob, if you could turn the mic on, please.
Sorry, there we go.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. A capital improvement program, as most of you know, is a multi-year plan that's used to define the scope, schedule, and financing of major capital improvement projects for the city government. The city of Southport is now in its second year of preparing and updating this program. The intent of the 6-year capital improvement program is to make a plan that shows steady progress in preserving the capital assets of the city. As stewards of the city's resources, it's incumbent upon us to monitor the condition of our infrastructure assets, their lifespans and replacement costs, and to repair or replace those assets accordingly. We were before this board to introduce the fiscal year 2025 through 2030 capital improvement program in April. The list of fiscal year 2025 projects was modified to reflect recent budget deliberations. We're now here seeking a formal adoption of the capital improvement program by the board. By adopting the 6-year CIP, you're not approving expenditure in future years. You're simply recognizing the document as a legitimate guide for future projects and spending. An adopted capital improvement program will also help the city receive grant funding, funding through the Local Government Commission, or to attain a bond rating. With that, I will entertain any questions you may have.
Any questions from the board?
I don't have any questions. I would like to thank staff and especially our engineers for creating this program. And with that, I'd like to make a motion with one exception. I make a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2025-2030 capital improvement program as proposed, except for removing the inclusive playground at Taylor Field project from the program and project list.
Is there a second to that motion? Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this?
I just have a question, Bob, and perhaps you can help me. We have a lot of projects ahead of us, and I think that's wonderful to have them laid out like this. But are they prioritized in any way on this list, or is it just all of the projects are just on here?
Are you looking specifically at this document here?
I am looking at, in the packet, the final CIP. I'm looking at pages 6, 7, 8, 9, just the listing of all of the projects in the future with the budget proposed, the estimated project costs.
They're entered in there primarily by the departments that would oversee those projects. They're not prioritized in this document according to need, but rather according to whether it's a Parks and Recreation project, whether it's a public services project, and then they would be prioritized at a later date as perhaps funding were available or some other variable was met.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
There has been some discussion with Stuart about in the future having a workshop in which we sit down and try to collectively prioritize projects to help the staff out as to what our things are going to, where we want them to go. We started off with 44. Some of them are completed, which is a great thing, but we need to help staff by telling them which ones we think are the most important. So I will be entertaining that idea probably in the next meeting with dates and stuff that we can work on that. Is there any other questions for our fine engineer? Not hearing any, so we have had a motion, a second, a discussion. All in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye. Is there any opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you.
And next, we were requested that staff prepares a document monthly that lists the dozens of active projects that the city has ongoing. That list is updated, as I said, monthly. Those updates are given to our board. They're also posted online for public viewing. But what we'd like to do now is just briefly summarize the projects that we have and their state of completion or whether or not they are still ongoing. So, Ms. Theron and I will go through those. I'll go through the ones that I have intimate knowledge of, and if there's a few that I don't have knowledge of, Bonnie will fill in some of the blanks. These projects are overseen and managed by our many department heads and other staff. And with that, we'll go down through the list. Our shoreline stabilization project, you'll hear a little bit about in our next agenda item, but our consultant is proposing their next phase of work. That project is in the permitting phase at this point. We have grant funding in the amount of $5 million that was provided for the project, and that funding is due to expire on the 30th of June in the year 2026. We have several projects that involve our water and sewer utility. As you're aware, the water and sewer facilities were recently given to the county for their oversight. These projects are ongoing to some degree, and we have a pump station rehab project, and that project will be required to be reviewed by the county. It involves pump station upgrades as well as improvements, pump station upgrades in 3 pump stations. The design is currently being finalized. Bids are expected in the fall of 2024, and with the merger completed, the county review of the design is required. The city will then bid the project. The county will award the project and assume responsibility for construction and closeout. And that at that point, after the bidding process, the city's involvement is complete. This is the same for a sewer replacement project that involves the replacement of approximately 16,000 feet of clay sewer pipe in our downtown area. The city will bid the project. We expect a fall of 24 opening of those bids, and after that, the county will award and assume responsibility for construction and oversight of that project. There was a merger feasibility study, which was an active project. That project has been completed, and obviously the merger has gone through. We have an ongoing kayak launch project. We recently received our CAMA permit. Yes, that was a task. The contractor is expected to mobilize. We've been in discussions with him. He is completing some additional work, but we expect him to mobilize by August 1st, and that should be completed by the end of August or middle of September. The board did award that construction contract at one of its June meetings. The Taylor Field Dog Park project is complete. There is a yacht basin dredging project, which is another substantial project. Survey has been complete. We have received a grant from the shallow draft inlet funding. Design, permitting, and coordination is underway. At this point, our pre-application meeting has been held with no major issues, and we are looking into disposal areas investigated for their capacity and potential use, and there's some studies and surveys that are ongoing as well. We had an item where we were purchasing extrication equipment. That has been done. Chief Drew oversaw that. That's been done. There were a couple projects to repair damage to our city dock, as well as Kingsley Park pier, and that was under a FEMA reimbursement grant. The work on those projects is complete. We are awaiting reimbursement by FEMA. Our next upcoming project, excuse me, related to that will be the reconstruction of boat slips on the city dock. We have two more sewer projects. An infiltration inflow study is being done by a consultant, and we have that study is ongoing. The city's reviewed and commented on a draft report, and we do expect the final report on that infiltration inflow study by August 1st. Following that study, there will be the need to construct improvements that will be revealed in that study. The design of those, some of those improvements is underway, and we are awaiting completion of that design with the final I&I report. With the merger again completed, the county will review those designs, the city will bid the project, and the county will award and assume responsibility for the project thereafter. There were feasibility studies that were performed for the police department and city hall as far as their future occupation of the city hall facility, and ultimately where the police department would occupy. Those studies were completed. We had a citywide building survey done that encompassed the condition assessment of all the many buildings that the city does own. That contract was completed, and a very comprehensive report was generated as a result of that. And I'd just like to note that as a result of that study being completed, that has generated several other projects involving the improvements to many city buildings. Public Services is awaiting a dump truck that was purchased, and because of supply chain issues that are ongoing, we expect delivery of it in the late fall or perhaps winter. Correct. Okay. We've also undertaken a stormwater mapping project. That field survey and investigations are completed. A draft map is being prepared. And the next step is to model the system to determine its capacity and capability. And a final report is expected in September of this year. There was a project to repair city pier cross bracing, which was damaged again during one of the hurricanes. That repair project has been completed. There was a project to replace roofs on gazebos that was overseen by our recreation director. That project has been completed. A compensation and pay study that was undertaken by our Human Relations Department has been completed. There are several projects related to our electrical system, our power generation. We are currently reviewing a second electrical point of delivery. Now, this is a project undertaken by the city as well as Brunswick Electric and Electricities. We're currently reviewing the feasibility of a second electrical point of delivery, reviewing property locations and other elements. So that is an ongoing project. There is a project to convert our overhead power lines and secondary lines within the city to underground facilities. That is also an ongoing multi-year project. Utility pole replacement is a project by which we are replacing our deteriorated and damaged utility poles in town, and that again is an ongoing multi-year project. There is a project for sectionalization and mitigation, which simply means that fuses are upgraded so that if there's a power outage, it does not impact significant areas of our city. That project is being undertaken in conjunction with the undergrounding of our facilities, and that again is an ongoing project. There is also a project to explore and install electric vehicle charging stations. That project is ongoing. We are completing a grant application that will be submitted shortly, and we expect that application to be submitted in August of this year. We have several projects that have been completed. I'll just go down through them quickly. Our system development fees for our water and sewer systems has been completed. Utility rate study is another project that was completed. We had a project to purchase body-worn and in-car camera systems, which has been completed. There was a domestic preparedness camera trailer to be purchased, and that project has been completed. A sidewalk along House Street from the vicinity of Owens to Fodale in the area of the Dosher Hospital is underway. That's being done in conjunction with the North Carolina Department of Transportation. They will be designing and installing, and the city is helping them, I believe, 20% in a financial assistance manner. There was a record retention project where we were digitizing documents for future use, and that project has been completed. There was a project, as we're aware, in Franklin Square Park to remove and repair trees that were either damaged or have outlived their useful life. That project has been completed, and several projects added to the list this year as a result of the budget deliberations. There is a project for City Hall renovations, and that will be undertaken when the police department vacates the building for their new locale. We're going to do some minor renovations to City Hall to accommodate city staff. Stormwater improvements that are a result of our stormwater mapping and modeling is a project that will be ongoing this fiscal year. There is a project to design repairs to the city pier piles. When the repairs were being done to that project, a study and an observation was done which revealed some deficiencies. They were not major deficiencies, but they should still be corrected as under the next within this fiscal year. The design will be done, and then the repairs will be made in a future fiscal year. Sidewalk improvements is an ongoing project to repair deficient sidewalks within the city. And as I mentioned earlier, there is also a project to design boat slips for the new city dock. There's a project for Franklin Square Park that is a result of the master plan that was adopted by the board some years ago to rebuild some of the elements there and make certain improvements in Franklin Square Park. There's also ongoing repairs to city buildings, again, that was unearthed during the assessment of our city structures, and that is an ongoing project to make repairs to HVAC systems, roofing, water heaters, windows and doors, etc. There's also a project, as you're aware, at the old City Hall to remediate some of the hazardous materials that were discovered there, mold, asbestos, lead paint. There's also a structural analysis of the building that will be done within this particular item. And lastly, there are improvements that, again, were made aware of as a result of the city building and assessment that at the Parks and Recreation building, and that will involve roof, gutters, door, HVAC improvements. Bonnie, there's a few that perhaps you have some intimate knowledge of.
First of all, I just want to say that thank God you put money in the budget for pillows. My God, these seats are so brutal. So they really are. All right, real quick, weather tower. So we did go back to the contractor to make sure we had the correct amount. We do need $77,250, and we have $70,070 on hand. So if somebody has a spare $7,200 sitting around, we could certainly use it for the weather tower. Let's see, inclusive playground, as you all know, is we're on a hold. I know Stuart's going to start working with the region and trying to get the managers together and the county manager together to talk about that. And then the comprehensive master plan, the draft vision statements were received, and the steering committee met yesterday to review those, so that's underway. And the parking study, the draft report for the staff to take a look at is July 22nd. So you should probably have that at one of your August meetings to start reviewing that. And I think, Bob, you took everything else. And I also know that the new city manager is going to start having project meetings on a weekly basis starting tomorrow, so that, you know, he can get more used to these projects and, you know, fashion this monthly however he wishes to do so. You're welcome.
Are there any questions from the board?
Last item on the list, number 44. Parks and Recreation building improvements. That's not the gym, that's the building next to it, or is it both of the buildings?
I believe it's the building next to the gym, correct, their main building.
Any other questions?
A quick comment. I've spoken to both the engineers about the importance, and I think they're excellent assets, tremendous assets, fantastic to have here. To have PEs working on your projects is a real bonus for this community. But we've discussed setting up clear schedules and timetables for all these projects so you can see from start to finish how these projects will proceed. And I've instructed the engineers, should you run into obstacles, we are available to unstick it and move it on. And I really appreciate their willingness to accept my approach, which is based on my experience. Thank you.
Any other comments? I have just a couple, obviously. When I'm looking at number 9, FEMA reimbursement, and it talks about the city dock in Kingsley Pier, those are projects that are finished. We're just looking for the money, correct?
That is correct.
So should we have them as separate numbers and say they're completed? Or, because this is a line item just to get money, not to actually fix the thing.
I can speak a little bit more about that because I do the FEMA reimbursements.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Kingsley Park is finished. I have submitted the invoices for reimbursement on that. The first phase of the city dock is completed. and we are waiting on the check reimbursement for that. But there is still a phase 2, which where the boat slips. So we can't start that one until some other things are done, until the
That's on the
contractor.
city pier. That's on the city pier you're talking about.
The city dock.
Yeah, city dock, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yes.
All right. My next question is stormwater mapping, nope. Under overhead or underground electricity, that figure of $1,600,000, we've been putting that in for the last couple of years. So that's a recurring figure as opposed to a set amount of money that has, if $1.6 million is not going to finish that project.
That is correct.
That number is a recurring number.
That's correct.
So every year, we could actually say we completed that $1.6 million, but I'm just playing with it.
Some years, the projections that Brunswick Electric has given us, some years that varies.
Yep.
Some years it's 1.6, it could be 1.2 the next year, so we try to update.
I just want to make sure that people understood it, that
Yes.
that doesn't complete the task at hand.
That's correct.
Franklin Square Park trees, number 35. Did I hear you say that is completed?
That particular okay, hold on.
While we're doing that switch real quick, everyone, please remember to speak directly into your mics. Alderman Carroll is having some difficulty hearing everyone back home. So please remember to speak directly into the mics. Thank you.
So with Franklin Square, I don't think we ever put in the initial amount for Franklin Square of all the work that's already been done. So this was the new amount that you put in the new budget to continue the work, and Everett, our arborist, is working on a plan of how he would recommend that money gets spent. And we should have that pretty quickly.
So at that point, there would be an event that would happen that we actually could close that out, as opposed to the next 100 years. Okay.
Yep.
There's always going to be money put in, I assume, money put in Franklin Square Park every year.
Yeah, it's just how it's going to get spent, and he's going to put together a plan.
And the last one is stormwater improvements. Contrary to what you may have heard tonight, we actually do still talk to the state representatives. And in the budget that has not been passed yet, there's several $1 million to be divvied out for stormwater improvements, and there's several $1 million that are already there. What I do not know how to do, but I'm just throwing it out for so we can move forward on it, is how do we tap into that money source? There has to be some kind of policy or procedure to do that. But I just know that there's a number of millions of dollars that are waiting to be spent once the budget is passed.
And the stormwater plan that Tom Zier and other engineers put together will be on one of your August meetings.
Right.
So I think everybody will be pleased about that.
I just thought we might be able to start looking at the process of how we get that money. And that's it. Thank you very much. Excellent. Okay, the next one is shoreline stabilization.
Okay. Thank you very much. In the form of a background of the project, the Cape Fear River shoreline in Southport's been undergoing increasing erosion, primarily due to the effects of wave action generated by storm-generated winds, recreational and commercial boat and ship traffic, as well as the effects of the ongoing sea level increase. The city's engineering consultant, Olson Associates, was engaged in 2023 to help us with the design, permitting, and construction of shoreline protection elements. Since then, Olson has developed comprehensive topographic and cultural resource surveys to support the design and permitting activities. They've held multiple workshops with the board where they presented erosion mitigation alternatives, refined cost estimates, and sought board consensus for phasing and erosion mitigation preferences. Based on Olson Associates' presentation to the board in April, the next phase of their work will be the permitting phase. They have prepared their task order number 4 which is included in your packet, for the next phase of their work on the project. This phase will include the engineering and environmental permitting services necessary to assist the city with obtaining state and federal environmental permits. That will allow for the construction of the shoreline restoration and stabilization improvements. Specific permitting tasks included in their proposal include development of design plans and supporting documentation, preparation and submittal of permit application and supporting information, biological and fish assessment, habitat assessments, sampling and analyzing sand fill samples, responding to state and federal regulatory agency comments. The cost for this phase of their work is estimated to be $117,000. Olson and their permitting consultant has tried to anticipate the information that may be requested during review by the permitting agencies and included that in their scope of services. There may be items that are required that are not currently included in their scope of services, and we'll address that as comments from those agencies come in after their review of the permitting documents. With that, I will answer questions you may have.
Are there questions from the board on this topic?
I don't have any questions, Mayor, but I noticed that the first assumption states that to implement the preferred shoreline stabilization design, the city will need to work with the bordering property owners regarding easements. So the need for these public-private partnerships with bordering property owners is a foundational piece to the whole project. I know that some of the bordering property owners have already been having conversations among themselves, so as soon as possible, I feel like we need to go ahead and prioritize contacting these property owners so we can start working together because it's to everyone's benefit that we implement the best design for the most successful outcome. With that, I make a motion to authorize the Olson Associates Task 4 to continue the work for design, development, coordination, and permitting for the shoreline stabilization project.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. Excellent.
Thank you.
The next one is the preserve at Fisher Landing sidewalks. Mo, you're up.
Good evening, Mayor and Aldermen. We've heard a lot of comments about this, but I'm going to just give you a brief synopsis and timeline of how things have gone through the city for us. So as stated previously, this is a 49-lot cluster subdivision located between West 9th and West 11th Streets, and it was approved in 2019. This, and I would like to just mention that with it, for the preliminary plat, sidewalks are required for any subdivision. And this subdivision was approved under the 2004 UDO, and that was still a requirement. And within looking at staff reports and for the preliminary plat and the final plat, sidewalks were always a consideration and mentioned that they were going to be installed. So I just wanted to state that. So, and as stated, there are 2 lots that are still owned by the developer, and the rights of way are still within the developer's name as well. So July 2020 was the final plat approval. The developer came in and asked for dedication of the water, sewer, and the roads. They got dedication of the water and sewer and easements, but the roads were not conveyed to the city. So that is still within the name. So at that time then also was the improvement agreement was entered with the surety bond of $66,412. Then, once that final plat approval, then the building permits were applied for, homes were built. There are 2 ways you can do sidewalks. You can do them during development of each lot, so that with construction as they are being built one by one, or they can be installed later. And I believe at first they were going to do it per lot as they're being built, but apparently they had shifted. And when they met with Travis in last April, they were very aware that they needed to complete the sidewalks at that point. So that was where we were. So the landscape bond was released, but the sidewalk installation still needed to be completed. Then September, Dreamfinder Homes came to the city, said we're ready to put the sidewalks in. The HOA and the members and residents of the subdivision were unaware that sidewalks were supposed to be part of it. I don't know where the breakdown of communication came or went or what happened at that point. They wanted to see if there was a resolution to move forward without sidewalks. There is not, because that is a requirement for the preliminary plat in all subdivisions. And so we went back and forth. The HOA as well as city staff tried to contact the developer, phone calls, letters, emails, with little to no contact or correspondence from the builder. I did finally speak with the builder. They said that they were restructuring the company. The people that were in charge were no longer in charge at the time of the subdivision was approved. So they were kind of going around and round and giving no answers at that time. So we could get nothing from them. They were not willing to accept the responsibility of installation. They said it was the builder's responsibility. The builder said, no, the agreement is with Who's Your Daddy. So fast forward to today, we have been in council with the city attorney. We had talked with Public Services to give us the very rough estimate that was in your packet for installation of the sidewalks at today's rate, which was approximately $88,000. And again, that was very rough. It does not include excavation, grading, painting, anything of that sort. And upon counsel with the city attorney and speaking with the city manager, I thought it was best to bring this determination to the board to see how staff should move forward with your recommendation. So we're coming to you tonight asking for direction on the installation of how we wanted to have these installed. So the three options we've given you is to do nothing and leave the installation to the HOA, or working with the builder with the HOA, call the bond and release the payments to the HOA as the sidewalks are being installed, or have the city call the bond and build the sidewalks and cover the remaining costs that we have. So that's what we have. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have that I can. Again, some of this happened many years ago, but I'm happy to help where I can.
Are there questions from the board?
I've got a couple. Is it possible for the city or the HOA to sue this? I don't know, is it the responsibility of the builder or the developer?
Here, in terms of what the documents the city has, it's the developer. But I think the builder or the developer is saying, I have an agreement with the builder. He was supposed to go. They were supposed to go do it.
So if we were to call the bond, do the sidewalks, and then that would also cost us an additional $25,000 to $35,000, could we sue for that? Do you think that would this be a waste of money?
I mean, but someone say something. Oh.
I don't have mine on.
Do you didn't have it on. That's the question. Do you want to say it again?
Could you just restate your statement?
My question was actually, if we call the bond, do the sidewalk, pay the extra $25,000 to $35,000 that it would take to do this, would it be a waste of money, do you think, given the conflict between the builder and the developer, to try to sue for the money?
Right. So I think your question is if the city were to undertake the difference, could we go after the developer to get that money in court? We could certainly go after them, and if we prevailed on everything, there is absolutely no guarantee we would get one dime from a judgment in court. It's just one of those things, a judgment's just as good as a piece of paper until you can go and execute on it. And so I just want to put that realization to this board in terms of the attorney's fees it would take just to get to the point of getting the money. And then from there, it's all about what assets they would ultimately have for us to recoup the $25,000, $30,000, however much it is.
Alderman Marsteller?
Well, so I just want to clarify how the bond works. If we call the bond, and then if this may be Brady, if we call the bond, then we assure the HOA and they start the project, and then we incrementally give them the money, or we would not just give. How does that work?
Yeah, very fair question. I think we're going to have to figure all that out after we get the money and how this is going to go and work. And the only reason I go and say that is if we're going to go and have the HOA do the work, even with a third party using public funds, you might have to go through the public bidding requirements still. So that's something that it's doable. We can get it done, but that's something that certainly we're going to have to figure out in terms of there would have to be some sort of agreement between us and the HOA, certainly, and maybe even a third construction company, whoever's going to go and do the work. To otherwise that the city has protections that the remaining amounts will get done to build the sidewalks. That's why I think that option, at least initially when this was brought to me, I thought was the most convoluted. But, from a practical standpoint, it's sort of the meeting in the middle mark. But ultimately, that's y'all's call. And the HOA would have to be on board with that option as well.
Well, we wouldn't do the work, right? Because you know what I'm saying. The HOA would be responsible.
Well, I mean that's what's got to be figured out, because everything the HOA is saying is they want the city to go and do the work.
I appreciate that, but it's really difficult. Just to tell y'all, and there's a person here from Cades Cove that knows that they had developer issues, so it's really difficult. And if it was if we had an endless supply of money, I'd be all in. But for us, as the liability of doing the install for a development project is really a difficult stretch, I think, based just on fairness to every other citizens and projects similar, just so you know. But I certainly support us calling the bond if we're not able to. I just don't understand that for $25,000 or $35,000 that a company as close as Wilmington can't. And I don't know if we need to just go see if we can knock on their door and ask them rather than depend on a letter or whatever. I don't know if the HOA has done that, but I mean, I'd be willing to go and knock on their door and say, "Come on, y'all." But in the interim, I can certainly support calling the bond and then making it available to the HOA to carry out the construction of the sidewalks.
And that's what's happened with Caves Cove. That's what happened with the hammocks. That's what's happened with Price's Creek. This is not a unique issue in North Carolina, because you cannot put enough bond money. We're not because we can't, because we don't want to, but because of the statutes, we are not allowed to put the bond at the rate that it really should be to complete tasks. And so if we were to give you money, we would have to give Cave Cove and everybody else money to do the same thing. And the road system, and your roads have not been accepted yet. I don't know if you even have any idea what that costs. That's big time. So putting city money into this project would be pretty dicey, because we would have 3 other developments claim, and by the time we get it all done, Laura, help me with this. I'm saying that you had to do your stormwater, and you never got your streets done, but you had to bring them up to at least something because you couldn't drive on them, and that was about $400,000 maybe.
My name's Laura, and I live in Cades Cove. I live on Cades Trail, which is the road that connects from Lord Thomas, Caswell Avenue to Robert Rourke. And there was a bond held. Bond was released in portions. Some of it went to the Cardinal Builders. Some of it came to our HOA because of completion of infrastructure. Just like you all had, our sidewalks were done and everything, and the road was done, but there was not a final paving so that the city engineer would accept the streets in the condition they were. I made a request to Dory a few months ago if the engineer for the city could give us feedback on what were the remaining requirements for us to meet the standard. And it was a stormwater inspection, storm pipe inspection that still hasn't been done for some unknown reason by my HOA. And the final paving, he estimated about $240,000 because partially Cades Trail has been brought up to standard, but not all the roads and everything. So we are at an impasse also as far as our roads being accepted.
I just wanted to bring up unfortunately, we can't have a debate here. I just want to make sure that you understood that there are other developments out here. So I have some other questions about, for Mo, and that is, there was lots of discussions about where sidewalks can go and not go, and can they be put closer to the curb? And I'm not sure that I understand that if they go across your driveway, why you can't get your car across it. Is it going to be like can't the driveway be part of the sidewalk?
So in the 2004 UDO, there were very specific street diagrams that did give a 6-foot tree lawn with a 5-foot wide sidewalk. Today in the UDO, if there's a 10-foot right-of-way adjacent to a curb, then you have to do a 3-foot tree lawn with a 5-foot sidewalk. So the 5-foot sidewalks has never changed. That's been the standard for the city throughout the planning jurisdiction that we've had. I personally am not opposed to lessening that planting strip, if it would be what you would like to bring forward. I think 6 feet is a bit much for those smaller lots. It's a cluster subdivision. They're under 10,000 square feet. I think what they were stating about parking is if the sidewalk crosses their driveway and they are parked there, they will be essentially parking on the sidewalk because those driveways are so short.
And is there, other than we did it because at the time we thought it was a good idea, is there a legitimate reason why the sidewalks are 5 foot?
I don't know I think there's different standards for sidewalks. I think that you want to be able to have enough room for 2 people to walk is really the standard. I know that there are some smaller sidewalks from I don't know how they got approved. Very, very old, yes. But for starting, yes, it's been 5 just for.
Historic part of town, the sidewalks, are they 3 feet even?
I have one more question, but I don't want to hoggle the microphone. If you 3 down here have a question.
Just one question. How many linear feet of sidewalk are we talking about? We're talking about, what, $80,000? How many linear feet? Because I don't know if $80,000, depending on how long this is $80,000 going to cover it?
There was a little over 2,000 linear feet. And as the HOA has said, there may be less than that because the widths of the driveway as certain. I spoke with Tom Stanley, the Director of Public Services, and they have standards that they say it's about $8 per linear foot for sidewalk installation is kind of their industry standard. It could give or take a little depending on labor costs and supplies, and so that's what you've got to consider.
My final question, and I wish I could remember what it was, because I was talking to a county commissioner about this, because they don't ask for bonds any longer. And what they do is I think the city, or the county in this case, has the ability to sue. They're the actual victims they're claiming. I think that's how I remember it. And then they can, like when you go to a restaurant and you give a bad review on that, there's a system in which you can tag the company, provided it doesn't go out of business. You can tag the company in which when other jurisdictions are dealing with them, they can pull it up and see that they ran out on these people. So I remember having that conversation. I think we need to look into what are all of the options that we have as a city. Now, whether or not we want to sue them, that's another issue. But do we have that ability, and do we have the ability to tag them to say that they can't do business, or that you can turn them down for business? I just throw that out for conversation.
Well, what I would say is what my observation has been is if you tag them, then they re-emerge in another name. That's what's going to happen. So that, Lo was going to chime in.
I was just going to say, this is like three-card Monty. You know, now you see them, now you don't. The HOA president is really trying to ask us a question.
Okay, so at the outset, we spoke to both the Hammocks and Cades Cove. We understand this is not a unique problem to us. We have also spent a couple of $1,000s with an attorney chasing this developer. The differences are, unlike the Hammocks, where it's a developer who is gone, this is not a developer who is gone. This is Hoosier Daddy. They have developed 2,500 properties in and around Wilmington. They have 163 property development in front of the Board of Aldermen in New Hanover County. I don't believe they're going to play three-card monte on us, right? As the HOA, what we've been told is our ability to go after them is very different than the city's. If you look at that agreement from July 2020, it's between the city and Hoosier Daddy. So please, we're asking you, go after Hoosier Daddy and get that money. The other thing, again, we tried to add was, there are still 2 lots in our neighborhood that are undeveloped, that are owned by Hoosier Daddy as of today. Because of that, we're stuck with that developer approving anything we do on our properties. But by the same token, it gives the city, in our opinion, and in speaking with our attorney, something to hold over them. If they want to develop those lots, the city has to approve it. So we believe there are some differences from Cades Coves and the Hammocks that hopefully will help you to help us.
A question for our attorney. Can we legally make the sidewalks a condition of approval of the final 2 lots?
I don't think so.
And who's to say they couldn't sell them to someone else?
Yeah, I'm just going to keep that answer real short, that I don't think we can do anything in terms of preventing any sort of, just saying residential dwelling on those lots. We can't hold the fact that they've built sidewalks, them hostage on them being able to do that, and that's set by statute. I'm not saying it's the right way, right? I wish we could use that carrot, but I would be very cautious if that's an avenue that the city would be able to go and pursue.
So I have a sort of elephant in the room question, I guess. The HOA seems like they don't want the sidewalks. So I understand that it's part of what was approved initially, but is there a way that we can not do the sidewalks, that not make them do the sidewalks? And I realize that sets precedent for other things, but they're at an impasse here as well.
Sidewalks are required for the approval of any subdivision. That is a mandatory feature that has to be part of your plat. And if it's not there, I won't be able to bring that subdivision to the boards. If I brought an incomplete subdivision with no sidewalks, people would ask, where are the sidewalks? Why aren't there sidewalks? Sidewalks are necessary. They're required per this chart, per the appendix, for every subdivision. So I don't have a way to give a variance or any way to give any relief in that sense. Statute, like from the UDO sense.
Thank you.
This is in between 9th and 11th, correct? So there's a good possibility of this being a cut through for the schools, things of that nature. Is there an entrance off of 9th Street for you? Okay. So it really, as things progress and our traffic grows, it's important to have those sidewalks. It's really, I would hate to not include a sidewalk in any neighborhood because we're already having a hard time with people moving around. Walking on streets is just becoming old fashioned. So it's important that we do these sidewalks. I don't see not doing it.
All right, I know that Alderman Carroll would like to make a motion from wherever he is. So would you go forward with that, please?
Robert, your mic is on.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with option 2. And if Maureen could clarify that option for the audience, that would be great.
Thank you.
Option 2 was to call the bond and release payment to the HOA as they complete the sidewalks.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any?
Sorry, Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Can I just interject just real quick? I think we need to make this, and I don't know if Robert can go and hear me. I think we're fine to go with that second option, but I think we need to make it contingent on the city being able to get the actual money from the bond. I just, if something were to go and happen where it's just not like we get a check tomorrow, then yeah, if that's okay with Alderman Carroll.
And the county actually has made that comment.
I'm comfortable with that amendment.
That happened.
I'm comfortable with that amendment.
I have a question. I need to understand, you're saying the city will pay the difference? Or the HOA will pay the difference?
I don't know
I need
anybody.
clarification.
It's number 2 is just that we're releasing the bond, isn't it?
It says call and contribute any remaining balance to the construction of call the bond. So we're releasing the bond for the sidewalk.
Robert, is that, you're only stating that you want to release the bond, is that correct?
As the sidewalks are constructed, the HOA would be required to make up the difference.
Okay.
Understood. And that would be the same program that we had with Case Cove, and I believe the others as well. We released what little bond was left, and they pulled on it, and then it was like $134,000 for Case Cove. So that's the motion. There's a second to that motion.
I've got just one more question to make sure. And the HOA is responsible for the construction of the sidewalks?
Any other comment? Not hearing any. All those in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye. Is there any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. I wish there was more we could do for you, but that's where we are.
I should have made my comment when we had an opportunity. You know, this keeps happening, and we have developments coming. Can we have a workshop to talk about what we need to do to make sure that it doesn't keep happening?
We can.
Thank you.
But it probably will not be in the month of July or August.
And maybe we could ask our attorney to look into perhaps those alternatives.
Yeah, and there's a reason I think why you guys don't have the performance guarantee anymore. And I'll just say I see it. I mean, obviously there's other projects that you all have. Unfortunately, you deal with this, but I see this all the time and trying to wrestle. Because I'll just be really brief. I mean, if you go and do it when, like, before all the houses are actually built, what then just starts to happen is all of the, bulldozers and all that stuff start going on the roads, and they start, and then you already accepted the infrastructure. So I'd be happy to at least try to go and explore, some of the best ways to go and do that to avoid sort of that one thing about holding up plat approval, and then the infrastructure gets installed and then it gets damaged during the housing building process. But I'll certainly go and look into that and work with staff too.
And Counselor, could you review Senate Bill 166 when you're doing that? Because it talks about sidewalks and that you can't hold up the CO if the sidewalks are not there. I mean, it's a whole new wrinkle in the world.
That was, you cannot hold up the certificate of occupancy based on the absence of the sidewalks. Well, damn.
And Mr. Mayor, I think Mo had something to add. I've already got it. Okay, thank you.
Brady, pretty much what you're saying is we really don't have much recourse, and no one has much recourse. The builder comes in there, does what they want, and they can walk out, and then the HOA or whoever's pretty much stuck with it.
Welcome to our world. Yes.
I got the same problem.
Yes, and what the councilor was talking about is, and I know this from conversation with the county, is that sometimes the bond companies are so shaky, they just don't pay up. And they close up shop just like everybody else when they get enough lawsuits against them. So there's no guarantee in any of this, but we'll do our best. Okay. Well, we would welcome your comments on that. Okay, number 5 is the real estate company. This is Alderman Davis and Alderman Carroll.
We may be premature at this point doing this, but the what we have in our packet that explains it does it very, very well. But just in summary, asking the city manager to function as a realtor is unfair and puts the city manager in a bad position and takes up city manager time from other things. Our city managers seem to be juggling chainsaws and flaming batons all the time. Do they really need to be trying to work as realtors? I don't think we have anything in front of us right now, but we didn't get a good response from the RFQ. We could try again. We had said that our priority was to make sure that we did not choose somebody who would be in conflict with anything else that was going on. And with 4 realtors on this board, we certainly don't want to create conflicts for them. So none of their companies, it's hard. So there are other cities that do this, that work with realtors, and I think we need to explore this as we get close to thinking about further properties, and but not try to make a decision tonight. Unless somebody else wants to.
Your mic's on, Robert.
Alderman Davis, I believe at this time it would be appropriate for us to go back out for RFQ.
I don't object to that. And in our packet, the explanation for this, and then the actual copy of the RFQ we sent, what was it, January? Something like that. I mean, that really spells out exactly what we're looking for. So there's no harm in that, but I think that we need to cast a very wide net this time.
So
I agree with that. I would like to look towards New Hanover County and agents with a specialty in commercial real estate.
Robert, are you making a motion?
Are you making a motion?
I wasn't.
Okay, so this is just for future discussion then?
So this is just for future discussion?
Okay, let's make a motion to, I'd like to make a motion to instruct the city manager to go back out for RFQ for real estate professionals, preferably in the New Hanover County market that specialize in commercial real estate.
There's a motion on the floor and there's a second. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Any opposed? So it's 5-1. Thank you, everybody. All right, those committee reports are in your package there. The manager's report. Stuart.
Have a number of things I'll try to move through quickly. The 4th of July, I think it's important to take a moment and celebrate our success. Too often we are in the problem-solving mode, and it's important to stop and just say thank you and celebrate that. I've received, and staff received, numerous comments from citizens, visitors, and board alike saying it was the best ever. I want to thank the public safety staff. Got two gentlemen right here, two chiefs, Corey and Drew, and the staff and the 4th of July committee, and all of you folks for your contribution. Just take a minute. Let's celebrate our success. All right. So we'll do a little bit of an after-action review just to make sure any outstanding issues or improvements we can ascertain at this time and get started. But it's really at the top now. I and my family attended. It's Americana. That's what we're all about. So good job. Inclusive Park update. Bonnie and I met with the county manager to discuss a possible regional inclusive park, with one option being on county property. We agreed to conduct a meeting with area managers for buy-in on this. I plan to conduct this meeting simultaneously with the public workshop, and I'm in the process of arranging the first regional managers meeting. But the county manager is interested. Okay? So there's progress. ET Day transition. This is at the top of my priorities right now. In my assessment, there are three parts. There's the administrative transfer of rules, regulation, existing plans to the county planning department for the county to use to design their own zoning ordinance rules and assume the permitting process. This is underway now. Secondly, a fiscal impact analysis of lost revenue and workload. I'm reviewing this now with staff, and we'll come forward with a recommendation. Public meetings. There will be 2 meetings, July 25th at the Southport Senior Center, with a planning board meeting August 12th. I think our goal and approach is to see a continuation of zoning rules in harmony with our zoning. And we need opportunity to express this sentiment. Courthouse renovation. Quotes are in on the environmental review. We are scheduling 2 meetings with the Arts Council to discuss the future vision and plans for the building. Meetings with elected officials and department heads and the engineers. Now that the budget is done, it's time to get going and untracked on these projects. Mr. Jarvis gave an excellent presentation. I've asked for project schedules and timetables. It's important that we understand the end game from start to finish and where we are at, and that I know and staff know where we're stuck, and we and the mayor and all of us can get involved and unstick it and move it forward, because that's what we're here to do, the people's business. And it's important. I'm holding these meetings with all of y'all and department heads. The stormwater ordinance is important. I am conducting these meetings to understand the issues on your mind and the priorities as we go forward, and to build, obviously, a good relationship among us all and with the staff, as I laid out in my opening comments, how important it is that we work as a unified body. Okay? Creek water management, I'll be working on the policy and the signage. I'll bring a recommendation to you in August. A strategic needs assessment, I'm going to do a probably 45 to 60 day needs assessment based on all the items you inform me that you want to see happen, and we'll go over that. But I do think it's important. What I try to bring to the table is organization of projects and needs, and then we set strategies and we move forward, maybe not overnight, but we make progress to a strategy of achievement. So I'll bring that to you. Personnel, we made progress on the job vacancies. I consider this a very high priority. We conducted 2 Director of Development Services interviews yesterday and scheduled the clerk position for interviews July 29th. I think it's very important that we fill these positions. I do see some workload imbalance in the organization that will be corrected by filling these positions, and then we'll be a leaner and more efficient problem-solving organization, although we're very good now. Finally, a retreat. I think we should have a retreat. Many of these subjects require more in-depth conversation, in my opinion, in a little bit of a more neutral setting where we can really get down to the root of the issues and work on visions and goals and strategies where we can just pause and take a breath and work together to find the best vision for this community, because we are at a crossroads. There are so many things happening, and we're at an important point. We need to take a break, sit down, have a strong cup of coffee, good breakfast or something, and really think these things through. I would like to invite the department heads to these meetings and let them talk about some of the things that came up in the budget. And just take some time, think about a couple. I'd like to see a day and a half to 2 days, whatever you're comfortable, and I'd like to see a retreat. Thank you.
First thing is I want to make an announcement for the chief of police, and that is the golf cart registration began on June 26th, and all the the current stickers expire on July 31st. So they will have at the summer markets for the rest of this month and all the way up through August 7th, there'll be a blue tent at the summer market so that you can drive your golf cart right there and get it inspected. No fuss, no muss. The fee is $50 for that, and please get it all done before the 31st. And to follow up on the manager's statement, one of the sticking points we've had is mostly because it was a state road, is 9th Street. The 9th Street culvert is much different than the 11th Street culvert, which has the same creek run underneath it. One is 48 inches and the other is 24 maybe inches, and it's half filled with sand. So working with our representative, working with the outgoing director of the North Carolina Department of Transportation out of Wilmington, within hours, orders were given. People came 2 days ago. A guy came 2 days ago to look at the culvert. If I understood it, Stuart, correctly, he also agrees that the culvert is too small. The fear is because we have to do it, we had to have some place for the water for the developments to go, so all the retention ponds, and who knows what retention ponds will be built in the former ETJ, they all empty into, on that side of the Howe Street, into Cottage Creek. And the fear was that the new man-made directed water would wash that culvert out, collapse the road, and it would separate the elementary school from the rest of the world. So the state is involved in now in trying to figure out if they're going to put a bigger culvert in or multiple culverts in, but the process is working as it should. So once again, it's one of those things where at the staff level it got stuck. It needed a little push from the state legislator and the city's this board as well, and we moved it forward, and hopefully that will be done. And with that, I'll start with Alderman Lay.
We just went through an arduous process with the budget, got a whole lot done, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. We've got a lot on our plate. We're going to be very, very busy. So it should be interesting.
Alderman Spencer.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Before I forget, I keep hearing August the 12th as a meeting, and we have an Electra Cities Conference the 12th through the 15th, which 2 or 3 people are registered for. So that's going to conflict with that meeting with the planning board.
I have all of that stuff to talk to the manager tomorrow and to Dorothy with, so we can deconflict all of those things and find out who's going to be around, all of that stuff.
That's great. And I want to welcome Manager Turrell in, and we appreciate him jumping in full blast, for sure. Congratulations to 4th of July. They're all gone, but I was a part of the parade committee, and there were 130 plus units. I think it was as big of a parade as we've ever had. And on a 1 to 10, I think one night they said it was 1,000. So I think that was Mr. Carroll's children that said it was great. We're definitely proud of the 4th of July and everything that all the employees have done. I've been approached by a gentleman in Ward 2 who owns a double lot, and he's interested in putting a storage building on his second lot. And in order to do that, he's been told that he has to join the property together. And I don't necessarily agree with this UDO item. So I would like for staff to look at it and bring it to us. Again, it's an accessory dwelling. It's not going to be a living situation. But I'm even going to go even further and say that we need to do away with this idea that we shouldn't have accessory dwellings that people can live in. Our UDO seems to, every time we come to the Board of Adjustment, anytime anyone builds a garage apartment, it's always, you're not going to rent this, are you? You're not going to rent this, are you? Well, that sounds good, but it limits our working class people, maybe single people who might need a place to live. So I think this is a counterproductive UDO ordinance, and we're going to talk about it.
Alderman Kelly.
I'm going to piggyback off of Alderman Spencer. In addition to the August 12th Electra Cities Conference, I think it's really important that we look at our meetings going forward and separating our meetings from the times of the county planning board at this time. In particular, because we are looking at the county planning board now having jurisdiction over what will become our former ETJ. I attended this past week both the county commissioners meeting on Monday and the planning board meeting at the county. And I think it's very, very important that we are there to hear what's going on at that level. And that's just something for forward thinking as we go through the next several months, and perhaps that's something that we make sure that we have on our schedule as well. I am very, very proud of the city of Southport and 4th of July and city staff and our community as a whole, the citizens, for welcoming with open arms everyone for the 4th of July festival. I loved having everything sort of more towards the water this year. I think it was a really great feel and really brought a lot of energy to the whole festival. So I even though Franklin Square Park has reopened, I'd love for us to think through what it looks like in the future, perhaps keeping some vendors down here along the waterfront. But that is just one person's opinion there, so I'm not speaking for the board. Then the other thing that I do want to mention right now, in addition to the Brunswick County softball team, we have some great ball players here right now. Our South Brunswick All-Stars, the 8U minors of 10U and majors at 12U are all competed at the state level. The 8U, I think, came in third, and minors were just eliminated day before yesterday. Majors are playing tonight as we speak. The softball, who plays out at Town Creek, the 12U and 6U both went to the state level as well. 6U got third place, and I think 12U is still playing right now. So we have a lot of great ball players going on, so don't forget to support the youth sports in the area. Even though they are not played in Southport per se, a lot of our Southport children play in these leagues that are run by the county. So just wanted to remind everyone that there are children in Southport. Thank you so much.
Alderman Davis.
Thank you. I've got several things. I promised my dog that I would be home by 9:30. My dog is used to me breaking my promises to her, so I do have a few more things to say. First of all, a reminder to the community that the public input meetings on Franklin Square Park, how Franklin Square Park will be used in the future. The first one will be in this building at 5 o'clock on July the 17th. That's a Wednesday. The second one will be in the park itself at 4 o'clock on Saturday, July the 27th. If you care about the park, if you care about the things that happen in the park, this is the opportunity for you to come and say. My next thing is about 4th of July. I don't know how many of you clicked to the fact that we had a 100-year-old World War II veteran in the parade, and we had a 97-year-old veteran in the parade. And the 97-year-old is not from here. I'm not quite sure where he is. I think Virginia or Maryland. Anyway, he was visiting, and his family realized that one of his bucket list things was to be in a 4th of July parade. And I made a few calls, and the people in charge of the parade made room for him. And he was in a big van with his name on it and all of that, and he was just extremely happy. Maybe he'll come back next year.
Actually, I saw that the whole side of the truck was electronic.
Yeah.
And we needed to get one to have your name on it, and we got to make sure it's
My name?
electric, EVs.
No, thank you. And now a question for the city manager. You said there's going to be an after-action meeting about the 4th of July. Does that include the board?
I prefer this to be staff, for instance. Were there any safety issues? Were there any traffic issues? How I think I heard something about vendors had some difficulty getting out. It's more operational, but certainly I'll keep you informed. If you want to put it on the agenda at a August meeting to talk about it in that bigger picture sense, we can certainly do that.
I would like to do that because I heard a lot of feedback from people. Of course, plenty of positive feedback, but also some people who felt that things could have been done a whole lot better, and then there are some very specific complaints on certain issues.
I also just want to add real quick, if I may, that all of you should have received a follow-up survey regarding the 4th of July Festival. So also please use that to submit any feedback that you feel is relevant. That is what the committee itself will use to then go into planning for 2025.
I'm aware of that, and I'm sending in my survey, but the public needs a chance to weigh in on some of this. I mean, there's some people who are really mad, and not the vendors. residents here. And if we put it on our agenda at one of our August meetings, perhaps they will come and talk about it.
We can talk offline and look at that. Alderman Carroll, are you still on the line, sir?
I am. All right. Yes. Good evening. And I'd like to first say thank y'all for allowing me to participate remotely this evening. It was a good meeting. Y'all looked good without me. Lou, I'm a little surprised you didn't mention the silent fireworks. I'll just go ahead and do that for you. And then I'd also like to say a huge thank you to all of the city staff and volunteers on the North Carolina 4th of July Festival Committee. It was 37 years of participating in a 4th of July in North Carolina in Southport, and this was the greatest 4th of July festival I've attended. I had a blast. So thank you, and good night.
Alderman Mosteller?
I just want to concur. This was a fabulous 4th of July. I loved everything about it, especially riding on the float with the volunteers.
Okay. And with that, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session under North Carolina General Statute 143-318, period 11A3, and 143-318.11A5. Both of those have to do with attorney-client privilege. So,
Second.
there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. It's unanimous. We're in closed session. All right, I'll entertain a motion to come out of closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Second, there's a motion and a second. Any comment? All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? We're out of closed session. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any comment? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It goes unanimous. And no, you don't get the vote, ma'am. Yes, I was watching.